Hey crew, it's Ben, and I'm back with another reaction video. Today we're going to be checking out another Rino bit. This is lifting the veil because I was told that this is going to expose whether or not I actually walk in truth or not. And so we're definitely going to check this one out. Let's go ahead and see what's up. I made sure to get the lyrics so that we don't miss nothing.
As we go deeper, lifting up the veil of ignorance will never ever fail. Lift the veil so we can uncover what the facade is. The best question a person can ask is who God is.
That is true.
Right up to the minute that I'm speaking, there are doubts of God's existence, His identity, and His whereabouts.
Everybody else can doubt all they want. I have zero doubts. None.
And life's purpose and how this universe functions.
I know that.
For eons, God hid Himself from a...
Like, not in its entirety by any means, but I do know pretty much the structure. I've been walked through the universe.
Men, so confusion set in, and after many years, man developed his own philosophies and ideas of who the creator is and how we all came, without scriptural evidence to verify claims. Devils with wicked theorized aims, who realize the truth and then intentionally exercise change.
So yeah, this will definitely expose whether or not you're walking in truth or not. And if you have any doubts about whether or not I walk, you need to check out my Bible studies. Especially Genesis, because I'm doing things in Genesis that have not been done.
And over time,
and we are not done.
The holiness was stripped out and took. God's word was not always in the form of a book.
Intentional mistranslation has done more to harm people than anything else. And if I told you what the grand deception is that would deceive even the elect, you would probably die from apoplexy. Because the grand deception is that the Abrahamic religions were based in anything.
The laws and the wisdom was always told to the prophets.
And that is not to take away. Like, I get into this in Genesis, so definitely, if this interests you, you should definitely check out my Genesis. We wound up somewhere it's different from where I started in that. So what if you start and you're like, what's he talking about? And wait until you get to the middle of the book. And so, anyways, yeah, what happened with Abraham was completely wrong. Everything about that was wrong. And then everything from that point forward has to be based on wrong. And so it's wrong. And but that does not mean that God can't use that book or any book. God uses Harry Potter to help people. I know that'll piss a lot of people off, but it is the truth. Whatever his message can get to you is what he will use to get his message to you. Somebody watching this video today will see that and think about that and realize that I'm bringing a message to you. God loves you, God forgives you, and there was never any sacrifice ever required.
Originally placed on a scroll, which those who wanted to read came and looked on, but eventually was compiled into a book form. The variations came through translation. The Greeks knew the original tongue the scriptures came from was Hebrew, the foundation of Christianity.
Or Aramaic. We don't see. I got a feeling I know where this is going, and we'll see.
Up from it, the Greek translation was known as the supplicant, a word meaning 70.
I thought it was Septuagint.
Up from it, the Greek
Sept is 7, so
translation was known as the supplicant, a word meaning 70, and that number was taken because 72 scholars did the work of translating.
no, that's not true. The Septuagint is because it was the original 7 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers, First and Second Kings. Like, the first 7 books are the canonical Hebrew Bible. Everything else, the prophets and stuff, was added on later. But the first 7 books are the religion. That is the Septuagint. It is the origin of the Judaic religion. It is the origin of all the Abrahamic faiths to a great extent. So, yeah, it's not 72.
70, and that number was taken because 72 scholars did the work of translate.
Like that's not true on the face.
The different interpretations have served as a deterrent. There were multiple versions that predated the current.
That is
the
true.
Bishop Bible, the Geneva Bible of Matthews, the Tyndale and the Wycliffe in 1382, the Vulgate, and Martin Luther even had a version. By him, the Old Testament was worded into German in the 1500s, but he let it be known there was a Latin version in 400 BC by St. Jerome. It was many more who got hold of the word and mishandled it, and they got it from the Hebrew original manuscript. Confusion, whether you use an old one or a new one. The question is, with so many to choose, which is the true one? A few years ago,
It doesn't even matter. That's the beautiful thing about the message of God, is that it really doesn't matter. It doesn't. Despite the best efforts of man, the message of God gets through. The message of God is that there is no need for a sacrifice ever, that the only thing that you have ever needed for redemption is to turn your face to God and repent of your sins, to live your life for Him to the best and utmost of your ability, to love your Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, and mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself is the sum of the law. Was that not expressly stated somewhere? I think it was.
I alluded to the fact in the Catholic Bible 7 extra books are included.
What makes them extra? What makes them extra? Well, I'm just saying, like, some people hold that the King James Version is the only true version of the book. Some people hold that the Latin Vulgate is the only true version of the book. I'm here to tell you that the book is not the message. The message is in the book. Read it.
Let me list them for those who might dispute it. First and second Maccabees, Ecclesiasticus, the Tobit, and Judith. The Baruch and the Wisdom of Solomon were dismissed. That's how it went from 73 to 66.
Enoch. Like, the book of Enoch is expressly quoted throughout the Bible, and yet it's not in the Bible, right? It's not in here. Because why? Because it doesn't give a certain message.
It contradicts.
Like the 73 to 60, it gets... What?
Started landing when man began to change God's words and lean towards his own understanding.
You want to know the really crazy thing about my Genesis study? The most crazy thing about it and how it wound up where it is the fact that I am insisting upon a literal translation. I'm going back to many translations. I'm doing it on Bible Hub, so that there's many translations available. And we walk through the scriptures, and if there's something confusion, we look at the word, and we go back to the original words and find out what the original words meant. And that is why I have come to the conclusions I have in Genesis. So when I go back, I am insisting on a literal translation of the word. And that has broken the word.
No modern day idol worship rules the mainstream.
And I'm only, 28 chapters. Today I do the 28th chapter of Genesis. It's broken. And that's just the first book. The one it's all based off of. Broken.
And Christ's teachings are not the same thing. When the ruler Constantine became a Christian, he made men combine religious principles with the ways of the pagans.
Yeah. And if you worship Ishtar, right, or Saturnalia, or Christmas, however you want to talk about it, like, yeah.
Holidays like Easter were based on the phrase that Jesus died and rose from the grave in 3 days. But if he died on a Friday, it's untrue, and rose on a Sunday, then that would make it only 2. They celebrate his birth in December, called it immaculate. But if you read the scriptures, then that timeline's inaccurate.
Had to have been in the spring.
See, shepherds don't have their flocks out in the winter, which proves that the Christ was not born in December. See, if Jesus was 33 and a half when he was killed, and his murder took place after the Passover meal. Passover was in March or April, this is a fact. If he was 33 and 1/2 year, let's count back. See, a half a year, 6 months, subtract from...
I could be wrong on this because sometimes facts just slip from my mind, and y'all know that I am quite open about that. But I don't think it says anywhere that he was 33 and 1/2. I'm fairly positive that it does not say that. I'm fairly positive that is tradition of man. I'm fairly positive that when you're doing this right here, you might be messing up on a monumental level. Just maybe. Like, that's the problem with books. is because people want to add in things that aren't there, and people want to take out things that really should be there. And so there will always be an edit, there will always be a bias. That's why I wanted to take it back to the book and make a literal translation. Talk about what is actually contained. And if the words are confusing, to look at the words and to show you how to do that for yourself, and to never take my word for it. Because you should not be basing your beliefs on what any man tells you. Now, you can get started because you heard me speak and God inspired you to listen to me and to move your heart towards Him. That can happen. But I can change your heart. I cannot turn you to God. That is a stirring of God in your soul that happens in your soul. And so never take what I say as the gospel, ever. And never take anybody else's say as the gospel. Because people, even with the best intentions, will add in things that are not there. Like, I'm pretty sure it narrows it down to like a 30 to 35 window due to when people, like the rulership of the houses and who was in charge and things like that. But that half, I am almost certain there is no half listed for his birth. If I'm wrong, hit me with it down below. I will look it up and I will correct it. Not in this video, of course, because I don't do edits in that, but
where I told you, 6 months from March or April to September or October, it's over. For truth, many died and others bled. What did Jesus have to do with rabbits and colored eggs?
That's right.
Had a ritual when springtime came around, and women painted their bodies and hid till they were found. And homosexual men hid too, and whoever found them can do any sex act they chose to. With Jesus' name lies.
And see, that again, that's another hybridization of things. Yes, things like that happened, but the celebration goes back to Ishtar. By the way, my favorite book, like my favorite story from the Bible growing up was the story of Esther, for such a time as this. And it wasn't until I went recently to Branson and saw the Esther show that it really dawned on me that her name is Ishtar. Easter is literally the celebration of Ishtar. It is literally the star celebration of the rebirth from Ishtar. That's why we do eggs. That has to do with her. That is part of her thing. So again, this is somebody with the best of intentions, not giving the truth. He's trying. He's wrong.
That tradition was passed down, and that's the reason why you hide eggs. And if this is the true date and something's unclear, why does Easter fall on a different day every year? What is Thanksgiving about? Who are the pilgrims? The wicked criminals who tricked the Indians and killed them.
See, here again, another misrepresentation. Yes, things like that happen, but that is not the Thanksgiving. Like, it's not what we were sold wholesale coming up as children, but it was not what is trying to be pushed these days in revisionist history, right? There was cooperation between the tribes and the peoples. The pilgrims weren't here to kill anybody. That was people who came later. The people who came later who decided to settle farther out, the pilgrims came here for religious freedom, and they were trying to coexist peacefully. They made pacts and contracts and with the Iroquois nation. Like, this is literal history. There were problems. Without a doubt, this country is full of persecution and bloodshed. Without a doubt. And I don't try to gloss over any of that. But when you're doing things like this, and you're trying to bring out the truth, then you damn well better be true. Like, you better be factually correct, right? You can't come with half-truths. You have to fact check yourself, because if you don't, the internet will. And I'm the internet right now.
You love Chris Columbus, but he was no friend of you. He left Europe and got lost. He thought he was in India. 63 years later, Africa's infiltrators, the motherland invaders, American slave trade.
Where did they come from? Boy, we stepping on all the toes today. Y'all really calling me out, right? Because I'm going to bring you truth. The truth is that nobody went over there hunting slaves. Like, yes, I am sure that somebody did. There's always somebody that does some stupid thing. But for the most part, the African slaves were sold by African peoples. They were already slaves, for the most part, when they were sold. It wasn't until much later in the slave trade that the African tribes went out to actively hunt other Africans to sell. They were slaves then. And then they're going to, it's probably going to come up. So let's address it now before it does. There were other slaves in the history of ever. You want to know how you can tell that? For one, read the book of Exodus. What does the book of Exodus tell you? Was that, I'm sure you're going to say that was just the African slaves, right? You were Hebrew national, or what is it, the black Israelites? That's where we're going with this, right? And so, they were not. They were the peoples of the Persians, right? They were not white, like they weren't less melanated, which is the way I like to talk about it, because as I see it, all of us are humans. God created all of us. And so the tone of your skin doesn't make a difference in the grand scheme of anything. I don't believe that there was a chosen people at all. I think the people who are chosen are the ones that follow God. And that's not always historically recorded correctly. And that's in Genesis too. But there were Irish slaves, and that's the one everybody likes to talk to. But there were Israeli slaves, there were Chinese slaves, there were Indian slaves, and not here, but like actually in India. Those were slaves too. Like, there were slaves in the entire history of humanity up until the 1800s. That is when humanity decided that it was time to not. And Britain did it first. They got rid of slaves first. They bought the freedom of their slaves from their wealthy people. But here in America, we said, no, we're not going to give you any money. We're going to pay for it in blood. And so reparations were paid in full, in blood, by mostly white people to free the African slaves here in this country. So that takes care of the reparations fight right here, okay? Because that is what happened. That is what happened. Brother fought brother and waded through blood to free other men. Now, that was not the main fight during the Civil War, but that is what the main focus tends to be on. And so we're going to go with that, right? If you were fighting for slavery, they fought and paid in blood for the freedom of other men. Most of them willingly, some of them by conscription, because the Union was not too happy with that. Like, they didn't want to go fight. Like, history, people, history. Yes, there were American slave traders. Yes, the American slave trade was horrific. It was terrible. Grand atrocities were done. But we weren't the ones going hunt them down in Africa. They were just going to pick up the ones that they were selling. They're still selling people on the block in open air markets today. That's happening right now. Somebody is buying another human being in the air right now, and it is not white people. Get that in your head.
The devious thieves who came to Africa to seize us, transported the blacks on a ship named Jesus across the Atlantic, made stops in the Caribbean, depicted Jesus' image as a blonde European.
And that happened. It did. It did. Like, I'm not denying that. Jesus was not a European. No, I will never say he was. He was Israeli, Hebrew. He was brown. He was somewhere between light brown and dark brown. He was more melanated than me and less melanated than sub-Saharan Africa. That is a truth. Right? They made stops in the Caribbean. They did use religion in a horrible manner. That did happen. It did.
Conniving, conditioned our minds and put the lies in. When Revelation 1 and 14 clearly describes it, this won't close to all of the lies.
I'm going to go back and look at 114.
Have been exposed. The CIA and FBI knows of UFOs. See, some claim conspiracy and mock presented truth.
I think this is pure speculation because I've never been visited by one, but I think that UFOs are angels and demons. I think the terminology is the only difference there. The way that they present themselves is beyond my understanding, and until I get to meet one, I cannot say definitively. But to the greatest extent of my understanding, they're one and the same. Angels, demons, and aliens are the same thing.
Go research the evidence and documented proof. You can find them in the Bible. The prophets know what they are.
Yep.
In the book of Ezekiel, the wheel that he saw. The government knows they're real, but it rarely surfaces. But more importantly, they know what their real purpose is. Economy falling, people tricked by the government. Calamities and plagues are all part of God's judgment. And in the end, real truth is never curtailed. When the facts get covered up, we're lifting up the veil.
Well, let's lift it up then.
Come on, lifting up the veil.
This might be the one to get me banned.
Yes, sir. Study, learn the truth.
That right there. Do your own studies. Like, for real, go back. By all means, go back and look at my stuff, because I have put together stuff. I'm doing another one today. I'm going to deconstruct the whole Bible line by line. We're going to talk about what it actually says. We're going to talk about the actual translations of the words. I'm doing that. And so when it says study and learn the truth, I absolutely believe that. I want you never to take me at my word, but to always go back to the source and see for yourself. Always.
Don't just take what people say on face value. Do your research.
But don't let people tell you that they did their research and you just be okay with that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they didn't.
I know you've been taught like this all your life. I know what mama said. I know they didn't give you this in school, elementary, middle school, high school, college, even in church. So that means it's up to you.
Yep.
Get your knowledge up.
Yep.
Don't be afraid to challenge the preacher and the teacher. Ask questions. Read. Learn history. True history. Oh yeah. And it's a man named Elijah Muhammad.
Boy, I love being right. I do. I love being right. Y'all go look at Elijah Muhammad if you want to be a fool. You go ahead and do that. It is a free country here, and that's because people like Elijah Muhammad have not taken over yet. Y'all by all means go check him out and see what he's about. And see if God tells you what he told me, because he let me know just what a demon that is. And so, I've said pretty much everything I've needed to say all the way through this. This is a 22-minute video on what, how long is the original? Like 6 minutes? We had a lot to say about this one. This might actually get me banned because I put truth out here for you. I'm laying it out on a platter. It is on the plate. Pick it up and eat it if you want to. You can go back and look. Like, I'm consistent. If I am wrong and somebody shows me I am wrong, I will admit that I am wrong every single time. I am that guy. And so when I'm telling you that this guy is wrong, that is always to the best of my understanding. But to the best of my understanding, this guy is a fucking idiot. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. I like the music. I like the fact that he's trying. Even if he's doing it wrong, if he's got you looking at the research, you're going to see the truth, hopefully. Like, hopefully you don't just look and just stop because you found out what he told you, or you found out what I told you, or you found out what they told you. Hopefully you keep looking at more and more and more until you figure out what's actually going on. By all means, check out my Genesis playlist, because I am deconstructing line by line the Bible, and it is not what we have been taught. It is not. The things that we have been taught are wrong. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Till next time, I love you. You're perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pittstake. Peace.